Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. Hey, guess who's back in the house? Beatrice. What's up, girl? What's up, baby girl? Beatrice is back in the house. Yeah. All right. So, I was able to get I picked up the truck on Monday, did a little bit, then I got home on Wednesday, got a bunch of my stuff. It's still a mess in here. It's like I just moved into a new apartment. But anyway, it's, it is what it is. I'm going to try to cut down some glare here. I don't think that's working. Anyway, so, real quick, I'm in Upper Sandusky, Ohio at the Loves. It's on US 30. Are you like me? Have you ever wondered why Sandusky, Ohio is up on Lake Erie, and Upper Sandusky is like 60 miles south? Like, normally, I think people, when you say the word upper, when referring to geographic things, they think north. We're just kind of conditioned to think that upper or going up means going north. But here's the deal. So there's a river called the Sandusky River, and there's a county called Sandusky County, and there's Sandusky, Ohio. And then there's Upper Sandusky. But it turns out, that rivers don't flow south necessarily. The biggest rivers in the country tend to flow south or in a southerly direction, like the Mississippi or the Missouri. But a lot of rivers basically flow downhill. That's where they go. It doesn't matter if downhill is to the north or to the west or to the east. They flow downhill. So Upper Sandusky is actually at the upper end, even though it's the southern end of the Sandusky River. It basically sits at the headwaters of the Sandusky, because the Sandusky River flows north into Lake Erie. And just kind of like an aside along those same lines, when I was a kid, I didn't recognize that there was more than one continental divide. There's the continental divide that, you see signs for it out west, but there's also an eastern continental divide. In fact, I went by it the other day in Maryland, but it runs up through Pennsylvania. But then there's also a north-south, which runs latitudinally, so the divide actually runs east-west. It's a north-south divide, and things on the north side of it empty into the Great Lakes. So anyway, share that with you. So a couple of thoughts about Prime so far. And by the way, one of the kind of tricks of the trade or things that I've learned by watching people's YouTube channel, like Lyle at No Hippie Trucking and Transportation, or Ross over at Johnson's Logic, great channel also, is that how you make money, at least at Prime, is by getting great fuel mileage if you can. Now, that's not always going to be possible, but a lot of times it is. So right now, I have run exactly 1,200 miles this week. Not a lot of miles, right? But I'm on my third trip now, and I'm actually going to Joliet. I'll deliver out there in the morning, but I'm on my third trip now, and the last two trips have had a fuel surcharge, but I'm getting 10.1 miles per gallon over those 1,200 miles. 10.1. So, I'm just doing my best to sip fuel. I will probably get some fuel here in the morning before I head out to, over to Illinois. So that's one of the things I learned from watching those YouTube channels. But I got to tell you, I've been running dry, before coming to Prime, running dry van at, some different companies for 2 years. And I'm a pretty quick study. But I got to tell you, man, the learning curve on reefer is kind of steep. I attribute that to two things. And I've always said the first is reefer's harder than dry van. Dry van, somebody loads it and you close the doors and go. Maybe put a seal on it, maybe not. Because a lot of times the stuff's so big that's in the back, or so unwieldy, or just so, kind of insignificant in a way, that no one's going to take the trouble to break into your trailer. And even if they do open the door, they're going to be like, yeah, I have no interest in a paper roll that weighs 3,500 pounds, right? Like, no one wants that. And most people aren't going to steal scrap cardboard, even though it has value. But in the reefer world, there's a lot more to it. It's a lot harder work. But the other reason I think that there's this learning curve is because, candidly, Prime's orientation for experienced drivers is inadequate. I don't want to say woefully inadequate, but it's inadequate. I've learned more by calling up my friend Lyle, or just talking to him over time, texting him, hey, what do I do about this, than I did in orientation. In fact, and this shouldn't be news to Prime because I put it in a critique that I sent to them that they asked me for, but a lot of the information's out of date, like the hours of service stuff. There were changes to the hours of service rules. And so a lot of the information's out of date. A lot of it is some of it is not applicable for an experienced driver. But the stuff that an experienced driver would need to know, because nobody said to me, hey, they ask you what division you want to go to, but nobody said, hey, what are you coming from? They just know that I've driven a truck, a commercial vehicle with a Class A license, Class A CDL. And, they know what my safety record is. They know that I didn't get any tickets. But nobody said, hey, have you ever driven reefer? Maybe we should show you how to set the temp on a reefer. Maybe we should, and don't get me wrong, I know there are training videos on the Prime app. But there's nothing like having somebody just show you and walk you through it, right? Because that's how I actually learn pretty well that way. Somebody said, I read it, then somebody shows me, and then I do it, and then I got it. It's locked in. But so if you're coming to this company as an experienced driver, whatever division you're choosing, whether it's tanker, reefer, flatbed, or intermodal, which is also reefer. And by the way, Prime has intermodal trailers, intermodal reefer trailers that, they just label intermodal, and those are ones that go on, TOFC trains, right? A lot of times what BNSF calls the Z trains, right? Like the highest priority. Those are the trains you see whipping across, the plains going like, 65 or whatever. But, so Prime is going away from the trailers and going to containers. So it'll be chassis and containers for people in that division at some point. They're going to transition. But if you don't have experience doing any of those things, you just came from dry van, let's say, or maybe an LTL company, you're going to have to learn some stuff without a trainer. You're going to have to learn it on your own. And everybody's willing to help, but you know the saying, you don't know what you don't know. And so, for example, I had a load that said, stop. It said these categories at this Walmart DC are live unloads, and I had that category. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna have a live unload when I get there. I show up for my appointment. I have about a half a tank of fuel in my reefer, and I go to check in, and the guy's like, yeah, you're gonna drop this trailer and you're gonna get an empty. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, how much fuel is in it? I'm like, half a tank. And they're like, oh, well, you have to have at least 3/4 of a tank. So I had to leave, go, and then rookie mistake. I thought, oh, because I honestly didn't really know exactly how much the reefer fuel tank held. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to screw around going to a truck stop. Whoa! Stop. It's a cat, and it's in a truck. Stop. You sit down. Man, you're rude. You're a rude neighbor. So I'm talking to people here. So I thought, I'll give $15 cash. I'll just throw some fuel in this thing and it'll get it to 3/4. It wasn't even close. I ended up, so then I have to leave that station. It had truck pumps, but then I have to go down the road to a Love's so I can put like a bunch of fuel in it. And that whole process took me like at least an extra hour today. Now, I read the instructions, but lesson learned. I'm just going to show up with as close to a full fuel tank on my reefer as I can, regardless of what the instructions say. And I am conscientious about not letting it run out. I know that's a bad move. But anyway, I share this with you because, like I said, it's a steep learning curve. And it's just interesting what happens. Like, for instance, Prime has this thing where you have what they call a live load call. Now, I know what a loaded call is. I've done them at other companies. So I was just going on my app and just doing my loaded calls, because the previous 2 loads were both drop and hooks. One of them I actually bobtailed to and just hooked a trailer that was already loaded, and then the other one was a legit drop and hook. Well, I didn't realize that when they said live loaded call, they didn't mean that you had live unload. They mean they want you to talk to a person live to do your loaded call. And you got to call in, and anybody that works at Prime Reefer knows what that is. And I don't know, maybe they do that in the other divisions. Now, I will say this. Lyle at No Hippie Trucking and Transportation was complaining about having to wait a long time for those live loaded calls. I called in today. This is my 3rd trip, but it's only the first time I did one. I called in, he answered on 1 ring. So I think they're just trying to screw over Lyle. They just don't like Lyle. So sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, so just little stuff like that it's kind of frustrating, because I feel like a lot of that stuff, a lot of those kind of things that are peculiar and particular to the company that they could do a better job of explaining. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful for you. Everybody be safe. Hey, I don't know what everybody's opinion is on this infrastructure bill. This is just kind of a quick sidebar. But if you haven't heard about the crack on the I-40 bridge over the Mississippi River, between Memphis and West Memphis. You ought to look that up. You ought to take a look at the picture. This was, I think it's called the DeSoto Bridge. And, you know, that bridge carries a lot of vehicles, a lot of trucks. I've driven across there, you know, many times, both in four-wheelers and in semis. And the crack was substantial. It was incredible, and it was pretty scary. You know, I hope that if you're driving, heck, if you drive anything, I don't care what you drive, I hope that you support the idea that we're just going to have to spend a metric butt ton of money on infrastructure, because it's badly needed. I mean, you know, the bridge that collapsed in Minneapolis killed some people. It's been a few years now, but that's just going to happen somewhere else. If we, you know, we're on borrowed time. All of us as motorists are on borrowed time just on bridges. Forget about, you know, dams and sewer systems and water systems and the electrical grid and, oh, I don't know, like huge pipelines that run from Houston to Linden, New Jersey, carry all sorts of fuel and stuff. I mean, we're just, you know, we gotta step it up if we want to compete globally. So I hope you share that view. If you don't, I'd love to hear about why you don't. But every bit of road construction that I see is necessary, and it's only a tenth of what's needed, a tenth of the projects that should be working right now. And by the way, that I-40 bridge is going to be closed for more than weeks, probably months. And, you know, this comes on the heels of the Brent Spence Bridge, which carries I-71 and I-75 over the Ohio River between Covington, Kentucky and Cincinnati, being down for several weeks because of a truck accident and fire. So, and that thing needs replaced. So, you know, hit your legislators up. You know, we spent $1 trillion on wars in the Middle East, and we got zero to show for it. I think maybe we ought to spend $1 trillion at home and keep people from, you know, falling to their deaths while driving over the Mississippi River. So that's my editorial for today. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. If you don't like what I said, please subscribe. If you do, please subscribe. Please like, comment, and share. I'm going to keep sharing what I've learned and what I'm going through, and I hope everybody has a use for it, and you're safe out there, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.